Hey there, I'm Tom from BorrowLenses.com, and today I want to take a closer look at one of Panasonic's full-frame mirrorless cameras, the S1R. Between Panasonic's S1 and S1R, the S1R is clearly the more stills-focused option. It's equipped with a 47.3 megapixel full-frame sensor, 273 contrast detect autofocus points, and will shoot up to 9 FPS. The S1R is also equipped with high-resolution mode that allows for enormous 187 megapixel images. And you know what? It works pretty well. On top of that, the S1R uses dual IS technology where optical stabilization in lenses works in tandem with the S1R's 5.5 stop in-body image stabilization for an even greater stabilizing effect. Pretty neat stuff, but with this brand new full-frame mirrorless camera on the market, it begs the question, how does it compare to other similar full-frame mirrorless offerings? Sony has the A7R III, their stills-focused full-frame mirrorless camera, and now Nikon has the Z7, a 45.7 megapixel stills-leaning camera. Canon hasn't quite made it there yet with their EOS R and RP, but rumor has it that they'll be adding a 50 or so megapixel full-frame camera to their lineup. For the purposes of this review, I'm going to be comparing the S1R to the A7R III and the Z7. First, I want to start with ergonomics. The S1R is a big, heavy camera, and personally, I like that. The button layout and overall feel reminds me of my 5D4. Cameras like the Sony A7R III feel too small for my hands, and I don't have particularly large hands. Even the slightly larger Nikon Z7 still feels a little small in my grip. The viewfinder on the S1R is large and bright, and at this time, the highest resolution OLED viewfinder on the market. Everything on this camera is positioned just where I want it. The knobs, dials, and buttons are all easy to access and get used to, and the menu structure seems dead simple, unlike some other full-frame mirrorless cameras. Sony. It's also equipped with both an SD card slot and XQD card slot, where the Sony has 2 SD card slots, and the Z7 will only use XQD cards. However, just because I'm a fan certainly doesn't mean that you will be too. Some users might find the S1R to be way too large, and others might argue that it defeats the point of mirrorless altogether. On the subject of battery life, the S1R's battery is rated for 380 shots versus the Sony's 530 and the Z7's 330. It's pretty clear that Sony takes the cake. Next, I'd like to talk about image quality and performance. I took the S1R to the Boston Marathon to put it to the test. It turned out to be a beautiful day for both spectators and runners. I snapped a bunch of photos with the S1R paired with the 24-105 f4 and was impressed with both the color and clarity of the photos. 47 megapixels is a lot to work with, and you're left with plenty to crop and post if need be. The raw files gave me adequate room to make changes to my exposure with very little sacrificed in the way of quality. Panasonic's remarks about low light performance hold true. Bump up the ISO in a dark situation and you'll get pretty usable images up to 12,800 ISO, and in some cases even 25,600, though you'll lose some fine detail. Autofocus is a different story. Panasonic made some big claims about the speed and accuracy of their new camera's autofocus system, and I don't think I'm able to support those claims. In both continuous and single-shot autofocus, I had a difficult time tracking runners. I found the autofocus to be jumpy, and in many cases, almost there, but not quite. It was a little frustrating. For static subjects, not really an issue. If you thought you might want to use this camera for action or sports, maybe think again. However, you could probably get by with this camera at an event like a wedding. I think in this regard, the S1R is easily bested by the other mirrorless contenders. Sony's A7R III has 399 phase detect autofocus points and does really well when tracking movement. The Z7 has 493 hybrid phase detection autofocus points, and when I tested that camera months ago, I found the autofocus to be pretty decent, even with adapted f-mount lenses. At the end of the day, Panasonic has done a good job offering a different flavor of mirrorless. The image quality is fantastic, and I could see this camera working really well in the studio, for landscapes, or for portrait work. I found that the autofocus is a bit of a letdown, but that's just one guy's experience. Overall, I think the S1R is a versatile tool that will cover a lot of ground if you need it to, between its high-resolution sensor and impressive low-light performance. So, there you have it, a slightly more comprehensive look at the S1R. If you have any questions for us, leave a comment or try this camera for yourself at BorrowLenses.com. And thanks for watching.